A highly interesting film here in 1975's The Day of the Locust, directed by the stellar filmmaker John Schlesinger, adapted from a 1939 text written by Nathaniel West, a film which is not necessarily widely cited as a classic, though its source novel is. Known for originating the famous name in fiction Homer Simpson, Matt Groening was a fan of the book, for being comic book character Yorick Brown's of Y the Last Man's favourite book, and for being a well regarded work in 20th century American literature more generally. Schlesinger's filmography is mostly celebrated for Midnight Cowboy, Marathon Man, his early British films, A Kind of Loving, Billy Liar, and Darling, and 71 Sunday Bloody Sunday, although much of his work from 1962, A Kind of Loving, to 1988, Madame Suzatska, are commendable classics, I shall claim here. 1975's The Day of the Locust is no exception when I'm praising the oeuvre of Schlesinger, outstandingly directed, convincingly performed, effectively scripted, and candescently photographed by Conrad L. Hall, whose prior credits included Leslie Stevens' Incubus, Jack Smite's Harper, Richard Brooks's The Professionals, and In Cold Blood, Roy Hill's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Houston's Fat City, and William Guercio's Electric Glide in Blue. His subsequent credits included Schlesinger's subsequent classic Marathon Man, and then, after a career hiatus, a bunch of nonsense culminating in the more celebrated nonsense from Sam Mendes, that is, the junk that was both American Beauty and Road to Perdition. The reason I wanted to discuss this film here today is so I feel familiar enough with an upcoming, when I chose to revisit the film, and now released, Radio War Nerd episode, which professes to discuss the source novel. I haven't read the source novel, I didn't want to rush my way through a reading of it, and so I just visited this film again knowing that I was an admirer of it in the past, for the sake of feeling up to date, before I settle down with the latest Radio War Nerd installment. And so that is why you see it here today, a tremendous exercise, highly impressive, and a characteristically strong work in Schlesinger's mostly superb filmography. If you are yet to see The Day of the Locust, do seek it out if you are able to. A marvelous work about the nature of Hollywood artifice, the toxicity of celebrity, the pervasiveness of elitism and the class divide, and why so many sufferers leave their former fellow sufferers in the dust once they make it to some level of prosperity. The Day of the Locust is prospectively nihilistic, but a highly compelling film, unafraid to distill the ugliness of interwar Americans, the rank failings of presumably civilized human beings, and how more effort is put into facade than to articulating one's earnest pathology. It is not for the faint of heart, not for someone expecting a series of laughs, and not for someone anticipating a sensational horror film or creature feature. Although to those willing to accept and feel as though this mode of cultural illustration is valid, Schlesinger's The Day of the Locust is an immensely worthy feature adaptation. Next time, the other work which Ames and Dolan claim to be worth revisiting before their next episode, and this one an original screenplay about the writing of an original screenplay, also set in late 1930s Hollywood, though composed decades later. What film could this possibly be, then?